And we are live. It's Dr. J here in the house. Today I'm going to do a quick chat on a various topic we'll go over in just a second, and then we'll open it up for a Q&A. Today's going to be the top 6 causes of gut inflammation. What are the root causes of why your gut's inflamed? First one's going to be gluten. Gluten is going to be a big one. Gluten increases gut permeability. When your gut's more permeable, undigested foods, undigested bacteria compounds, casein, gluten, other additives can get into the bloodstream, can create more stress, more inflammation, and that's one of the biggest autoimmune triggers. So gluten, and we can kind of put other food allergens like casein and other inflammatory refined sugars and junky fats in that category. Number 2 is going to be infections. Infections could be things like parasites. It could be bacterial overgrowth, SIBO. It could be fungal overgrowth. It could be H. pylori. And of course, there's lots of different parasites like we talked about. These things are going to create stress on your gut. Your gut, essentially, that's where the enteric nervous system sits. So the more stress you put on your enteric nervous system through inflammation in the gut, more gut permeability, it's going to stress out your adrenals. It's going to make it hard for you to get into the parasympathetic nervous system state, which is going to help with digestion, enzymes, acids, and to make it harder for you to break down food, can create further SIBO, further acid reflux, further digestive issues. And again, the more inflammation and stress we have in our gut, the more our immune system and our IgA levels drop, which then makes us prone to more infections down the road. So the more compromised we are, the more prone we are to infections at a later date. And so typically we have some level of stress, poor digestion, weakened immune response, and then now we're open up to deeper infections down the road. All right, number 2. Number 3, it kind of dovetails with that: low enzymes, low acid, low bile salt support, not enough of those digestive secretions to break down these foods. We don't have enough good acids and enzymes and bile salts. One, these compounds have an antimicrobial effect, so they make it harder for bad microbes to grow. Number 2, they help us to break down a lot of these foods so we can assimilate, digest, and absorb and utilize them. So really important. And then number 3, if we don't break foods down, they tend to rot, putrefy, ferment. That's going to be a problem. Number 4 is going to be antibiotics. Antibiotic exposure is going to be a big thing. That's going to, one, wipe out a lot of the good flora. It's going to create rebound overgrowth with bad bacteria and bad fungus, and that can create more stress in the gut. Antibiotics also have known side effects of affecting mitochondria and creating a lot of oxidative stress, and then that can create a whole host of other energetic issues. And then, of course, you can create superbugs taking it too much, and it makes it harder to wipe out other microbes in the future. Number five, I would say, are going to be bad fats. So we have like food allergens, but you have a lot of inflammatory fats, lots of refined, junky fats. The more we increase our omega-6, bad omega-6, refined omega-6, kind of bad fats, omega-6 trans fats are in this category. That's going to increase inflammation. That's going to increase inflammation. I would say after that is acid blocking medication. Acid blocking medication is going to be another big one. If we don't have good digestion and we don't break down our food, that's going to create more inherent gut stress over time. We need to break down our protein, ionize our minerals so we can absorb and assimilate and utilize them. And I would say after that would be like NSAIDs, like a lot of your anti-inflammatory NSAIDs. They have known side effects of affecting the liver, lowering glutathione, and also thinning out the gut lining. So NSAIDs can definitely be a stressor on the gut and make you prone for ulcerations, etc. And H. pylori is also connected to ulcerations too. So looking at everything, foods, gluten, junky fats, infections, poor digestion, poor HCl, poor enzymes, and then of course, some of the medications like the NSAIDs, etc. So I gave you about 5 or 6 different things there that are one of the big driving factors of gut inflammation. Now, how can we test for gut inflammation? Number 1 is clinically, do you have gut symptoms? Do you have pain? Do you have irritation? Do you have any bowel motility, excessive bloating? Do we have any reflux? Do we have any gut symptoms? Are we constipated? Are we moving our bowels every day? Number 1. Number 2, do we have increases in calprotectin? Do we have immune marker imbalances like IgA is excessively high or low? Do we have lower elastase markers? Do we have really like a lot of bloating or burping or excessive flatulence after meals? These are all really good clinical and diagnostic markers that something could be at bay. And of course, do we have an infection? Do we have a history of bacterial overgrowth, a SIBO breath test, parasitic infections, H. pylori issues? Then we know that we're going to have gut inflammation for sure. All right, let me open it up to a couple of questions here. All right. What do you think of fermented cod liver oil? Any brands you recommend? Yeah, I think fermented cod liver oil is good. I mean, you're going to have some vitamin K, you're going to have good fatty acids, and of course, you'll get some probiotics out of the fermentation. There's a couple of good brands out there, but I think good quality cod liver oil is great. My son gets cod liver oil every day. Grace writes to Dr. J, there was a child that I know I've been working with, an occupational therapist, but he has issues with body awareness. Is the best way. I can't describe it. For example, it takes him a while. Is there a question, though? Let me see. He has problems bringing it to his fingers, and his eyes are closed. He also eats mostly carbs and sugars, and he's a really picky eater. Wondering how nutrition possible gut infections could be related to impaired motor complexes. Yeah, I mean, anytime you have increased gut inflammation, anytime you inflame the gut, you're going to make it harder to absorb nutrition. Anytime you have leaky gut and gut inflammation, you're going to potentially create inflammation in the brain. So the first thing you can do is drop the inflammation, make sure digestion's good, and increase nutrient density. That's the best thing you can do. Ashley writes in, Dr. J, what if ACTH and cortisol are elevated? That's not Addison's, right? Because cortisol is up too. So ACTH is going to be like the stimulator that stimulates cortisol to go up. So in Addison's, they're going to do like an ACTH stim where they actually increase ACTH with a medication. And then typically, if it's Addison's, then cortisol continues to stay low. So if cortisol goes up with ACTH stimulation, then that wouldn't be Addison's. Which brands of nut milks do you recommend after AIP? You can look. There are a couple out there that are some decent ones that have some guar gum and some things like that in there. So you have to just see how sensitive you are. Coconut milks. I think Native Forest has one that's guar gum free. And there's also tiger nut milks, which I think are also AIP approved. I would look on a couple of the AIP blogs. They go into it a little bit better than I do, but those are a couple. I do some that have some guar gum in it because I'm not that sensitive to those, but some people are, and you have to just, you can do the Native Forest one for the coconut that I just mentioned. Hope it helps. How do you get rid of bacterial and fungal issues? Take a look at some of my podcasts on the topic, but you want to test and make sure you know what you're actually going after. And there's specific herbs that we'll use, whether it's GI Clear 1 or 3 or 6 or 4. It just depends. Sherry writes in, hey, Sherry, I forgot to ask you ways to improve my gum health. So first thing you can do is you can do some oil pulling, 5 or 10 minutes, coconut oil, flush it around your mouth. Number 2, there's a good toothpaste out there that I use called Revitin. I like Revitin because it actually has K2 and it has CoQ10. And there's some data on CoQ10 topically for the gums, helping to reduce inflammation. So I like the Revitin toothpaste. That's really good. There's also some toothpaste that have the Lactobacillus salivarius in there, which is a really good probiotic for the mouth, which is great. Delty writes in, how often do you find your patients are overworked and should not be doing strenuous exercise? I'd say some. I'd say some for sure. It just depends. Patients, most of the time that come in to see me are already really educated and have already kind of dealt with that. But if we're doing exercise that we're feeling more fatigued afterwards and it's not energizing us and we can't emotionally repeat it and we're feeling beaten up the next day, we really have to adjust the frequency, intensity, and duration on that. Lucinda writes in, what can I do to stop any outbreaks of cold sores this winter? Keep your immune system strong. So I did a good article on what to do when you get sick, part 1, part 2. Take a look at that. Anything with cold sores, increasing vitamin C, increasing lysine, reishi mushroom, colloidal silver, higher dose vitamin A. These are all really, really good options. All right. Oh, yeah, and Grace, your question, put it all on one text next time. You spread it out. It's harder for me to go through it. Keep it all on one if possible. Best preparation concerning nutrition and supplements before a stool test. Just your typical diet that you're on. You know, if you're on a autoimmune or low FODMAP template, just stay with what you're doing. I think that's great. As long as it's good, nutrient dense, anti-inflammatory, and low toxin, that is wonderful. Marcia writes in, could you tell me best supplements to take for acid reflux with having histamine intolerance? Very nervous case I react. I would do just HCl and enzymes. Just work on breaking down the food, see how much that helps. Sometimes just not digesting food can really create a lot of problems. Excellent. Hello, I'm with my boss, Wanda. She wants to know what's the best thing to take naturally to lower blood pressure. In general, the easiest thing for lowering blood pressure is going to be magnesium and or potentially potassium as well. But in general, diet-wise, you've got to lower inflammation. So all of a kind of a paleo template that lowers inflammation. And then, of course, getting the carbs under control because high amounts of insulin causes increased fluid retention, which increases blood pressure. So decrease insulin, paleo, template, lower carbohydrate, and then you can increase magnesium and potassium. That helps a lot. What kind of bars do you recommend? They seem to all contain rice flour. There's a couple of bars that I've been doing recently from Costco that are like a granola bar, but they're basically almond, coconut, and pecan. And they're sweetened with a tiny bit of honey and maple syrup. That's a nice bar because it's just really, really clean. 4 or 5 ingredients and no grains at all. I like that one. You can look at some of the Primal Kitchen bars, some of the Bulletproof bars. Are some decent ones. What do you think of natto? Do you eat it? I typically don't do a lot of soy, but natto is a fermented version, and it's going to have a lot less of the goitrogens and the estrogens that may increase estrogen levels. So it's fermented, so it's a little bit more better nutrition. Kelly writes, did experience itching after taking Sacroflora. Should I stop the probiotic? It could be a die-off. If it's significant, then you can always come off it, follow a supplement holiday protocol, and add it back in slowly. That'd be the easiest, best thing. Tisha writes in, do you work with kids that have gut issues? All the time. All the time. Great question, Tisha. Stephanie writes in, how does the removal of gallbladder affect, if at all, digestive health? Big time. So what happens is the gallbladder is gone, so now the common hepatic bile duct, the duct from the liver that went to the gallbladder, that duct essentially becomes the gallbladder. And it doesn't have the ability to concentrate bile, so it just kind of drips. And so you don't have a punctuated release of bile when fat comes in. So normal physiology is you eat fat, your body makes this hormone called cholecystokinin that stimulates the gallbladder to contract. You have about 15 to 20 times more concentration of bile in the gallbladder, so that contraction then releases all of it, specifically when that fat's there. Now when the gallbladder is removed, you have that bile just dripping. You have no concentration, and you have no real good timing of it being excreted. Does that make sense? So not having a gallbladder is kind of a big deal. So you really want to be on bile support for the rest of your life. Can candida die-off cause elevated cortisol, elevated ACTH, temporarily distress on your body? Yeah, any type of physical, chemical, or emotional stressor can definitely increase ACTH. Of course, it's going to have to be more acute, but definitely. Riley writes in, what happens on a biological level when you have an autoimmune disease and can't tolerate eggs, dairy, and even other multiple reintroduction versus somebody without autoimmune disease? Well, number one, it's going to create immune stress, and that immune stress, that inflammation may, one, increase gut permeability, and then when the gut's more permeable, you're going to have more immune stress and potential more autoimmune antibodies because your immune system is seeing a lot of these foods. It's freaking out. It can make antibodies that could potentially attack other tissue. So you just got to be careful. If you have an autoimmune issue, I know, Riley, with your past, I know you do have some, so you got to be careful because that could create more gut permeability, and that could set you up for a flare of the autoimmune condition you have and or others down the road. So you got to be really careful with that. You're welcome, Kelly. Adam writes in, based on low FODMAP for 3 weeks, started Xifaxan Sunday and taking oregano oil and olive leaf and berberine. Any other suggestions for SIBO and hiatal hernia? So you got to make sure it's not just SIBO. You have to follow the 6 R's. I don't see that you're dialing in the adrenals. A lot of people with a lot of gut stress can have problems with inflammation and energy, and the adrenals may need to be looked at as well. Also, I always follow the 6 R's. So we're removing the bad foods, remove. The second R is replacing enzymes and acids, repairing the gut lining and or the hormones. So that third R needs to be addressed. Fourth R is removing the infections, but you got to make sure it's not just SIBO. It could be other things. Fifth R, repopulate, reinoculate. 6 R, retest. Got to go in that order for optimal success. Hope it helps. Riley, you're welcome. Matt writes in, what are your thoughts on fulvic acid as supplements for energy? Do you use it in practice? Fulvic acid or fulvic minerals are great. Some can really help bind up biotoxins like mold toxins, mycotoxins. So I think it can be helpful. I use it in some of my binder products to help with die-off. Is serrapeptidase good for gut infections? I mean, it'll help with biofilms, but it's not necessarily going to help to kill an infection, but it would help with some of the biofilms, which are like the protective shields that are used by a lot of this not so good bacteria. So it can really help with knocking down the biofilms, which then can make your other herbals that you're using actually more effective. So that may allow the herbals that you're using to kill and wipe out the bacteria better, which is great. All right, excellent. Any last questions, y'all, before I jump on to my next call here? Let me know. Excellent. Great questions today. Really appreciate it all. Let me check Facebook here. I think we're good up here. All right, guys, today was a phenomenal chat. Really appreciate it. I'll be back on Friday. I think today's Wednesday, so 2 more days. I may sneak in another session before. Put your comments down below. If you're enjoying this, thumbs up, subscribe, hit the like button. Let me know your experience and feedback with any of the topics we talked about, anything that resonates. Would love to know. All right, y'all, you guys have a phenomenal day. You guys take care. Bye.